filth. Always remember, I am nothing.
I was apprenticed to the most powerful being in the galaxy once. I was destined to become so much more.
We meet again, Kenobi. Welcome to my world. Take them back to the palace.
This story will tell the complete life of Darth Maul, in chronological order, using each and every canon source. From the child of the mysterious Dathomirian witches, apprenticeship to Sidious and early training, the first Jedi he killed, the duel of fates on Naboo, how he survived for 12 years in squalor and isolation, and how he rose to take on apprentices of his own, create his own empire, and wage his dual wars, one against his Sith master, one against the Jedi Obi-Wan Kenobi. But our story begins some decades before the Clone Wars. On a world steeped in dark-side energy, Mother Talzin would give birth to a red-skinned boy. The exact year is lost to history, but his legacy of rage and revenge would burn its way across the galaxy. This boy's mother was the head of the Night Sisters, a matriarchal group of dark-side magic wielders. They lorded over the males of the society, keeping them in settlements that were devoted to growing their physical strength. When it was time for mating, the Night Sisters would come and take their pick. Maul's father is unknown, but Talzin instantly recognized that this child was special. His innate connection to the Force was palpable. Talzin personally cared for Maul, while his brothers Feral and Savage were tossed aside and sent back to the settlement. During these early years, he would receive the ceremonial black tattoos that covered the Dathomirian Zabrak's bodies. Perhaps detecting this creature's appearance in the dark side, a human calling himself Darth Sidious came to visit Dathomir. Once he showed the clan mother his own powers as a dark side wielder, these two masters of their respective dark arts decided to share knowledge, combining Sith teachings with the Night Sister magics. And with this bond came a promise. The Sith Lord would take Talzin as his right hand, bringing the galaxy under the rule of the Sith and Night Sisters. But this was a lie. Sidious too could sense the potential in Maul, and if trained properly from this young age, he could become a powerful apprentice in the Sith tradition of the Rule of Two. Talzin was devastated, and would spend her life plotting to get revenge on this Sith Lord, who had disappeared into the void of space just as suddenly as he appeared. It would be decades before she would see her son again. Sidious would have the young Zabrak's mind, muscles, and his Force connection beaten and forged into a weapon. Channeling anger and athleticism, he killed the galaxy's most fearsome monsters with just primitive tools, until he found a weapon that would most suit his style of combat. Sidious knew of accounts of the double-bladed lightsabers that dated back to the mythical stories of the Sith Lord Exar Kun, stories that were passed down through the Keldroma epics. A weapon that was known to be more difficult, but also more intimidating. Less wieldy, but much more deadly in the hands of a purely offensive combatant. As Maul grew more proficient with the red-bladed weapon of the Sith, Sidious took his apprentice to Malachor, showed his apprentice the remains of the ancient battle between the Sith and the Jedi, all under the shadow of the Great Temple. When this Kyber-powered superweapon was unleashed that fateful day, a design which would later inspire the Death Star, both Sith and Jedi were turned into ash, frozen in time. Sidious wanted Maul to feel a connection to these ancient Sith, and experience this attack from the Jedi, so he made him breathe in the ashes of a slain Sith warrior. Maul's connection to the Force allowed him a brief but intense vision, voices chanting, "Far above, far below. We don't know where we'll fall. Far above, far below. What once was great is rendered small." And Maul could see the other Sith being cut down by the Jedi, and eventually feel all of their pain. Experience 1,000 saber blades burn through his body. Experience 1,000 deaths. When he snapped back to the present, his burning want to gain revenge against the Jedi had been ignited. But Sidious knew that this fire must be properly fueled. And instead of killing Jedi, it would be several years of hunting the galaxy's most deadly beasts, like the enormous Rathars. But in secret, Maul would stalk the Jedi just to prove that he could evade their detection. The thrill of knowing that he could swoop down at any moment and take the life of one who thought that they were safe in the light side of the Force. This infuriated Sidious, and he warned Maul that if he continued to threaten his grand plan, if he risked revealing the existence of the Sith prematurely, he would kill Maul himself. The apprentice is then told that the pirates in the Kellic system had captured a member of the Trade Federation, a valuable pawn that Sidious would like to leave on the board. Maul arrives in his scimitar and makes quick work of their ships, but grows frustrated at his master's restraints. A room full of goons are effortlessly cut down, while Maul was just thinking about his lust to kill a Jedi, and the dark side seems to have rewarded this, as one of the pirates confuses him for a Jedi and desperately begs for his life, telling the Zabrak that he knows of a kidnapped Jedi Padawan that was going to be sold at a slave auction. Concealing this information would mark the first time that Maul deliberately disobeyed Darth Sidious. Wanting to go and kill this Padawan, he needed to keep his new side mission a secret, so he murders the Neimoidian he was sent to rescue, thinking to himself, my master has his secrets, so too do I have mine. This would take him to the infamous crime-infested world of Nar Shaddaa. As he entered the cantina on the so-called Smuggler's Moon, he thinks to himself something that will prove prophetic. My life ends only when my rage has been vented, when my need for vengeance is satisfied. The patrons were beaten for their refusal to provide intel, knowing that if he ignited his Crimson Blade, word would spread, perhaps even to one of Sidious's countless informants. Once defeated, a group of bounty hunters introduces themselves, saying they know the criminal Maul was asking about. Aurra Singh, Cad Bane, Vordilo, and a Chadra fan named Tek Tek had killed a crew that was heading to the auction. With some plying of the protocol droid, it agreed to lead them to the Draxel system. Zev Zexus' event was a who's who of criminals, with many organizations that Maul would later come to bring under his control. As the hostess explains the main item, Maul's Dark Eye probe droid reports to him that it has located the prisoner. He is now face to face with his enemy, able to kill one of those from the Order that had killed thousands of Sith. He basked in her primal fear, but was interrupted by Zrexus and her retinue of droideka guards. Even for Maul, in these close quarters, with those heavy blasters and shields, he might not make it. And as he left the Jedi, he mused that ironically he was seeing that immense patience and restraint was required, even for a simple mission as this. And he grants that Sidious's grand plans within plans require even more patience. But still, he should find ways to allow Maul to kill. The bounty hunters figure out who won the auction and sneak aboard the Mugen ship and incapacitate the crew. As the winners arrive, they are swiftly killed by Maul. But it's his manipulation of his cloak around one of the targets that was picked up by the Padawan. She could tell he was a Force user, but sensed that he was no Jedi. She asks if he is a Sith, and Maul confirms, being the first instance of a Jedi knowingly meeting a Sith in over 1,000 years. Maul repeats the line he heard by the long-dead Sith of Malachor, what once was great was rendered small. Padawan Eldracatus tried to show confidence, and baits Maul into a fair fight. Just then, Zrexus sets off an explosive that had been previously planted in the Mugen ship, and announces to the bidders that they can now buy in to hunt down the Jedi themselves. As hordes of hunters descend on them, Maul frees the Padawan and gives her her lightsaber. They protect one another, while also knowing that their sabers will eventually turn to each other. She pleads with him to turn away from the darkness, but to no avail. The fight is intense, Maul admits he underestimated her, and she surprised him with a move to cause a small avalanche. But Maul's strength did not fail him. He surged up through the rocks, and the crimson blade of a Sith tasted the blood of a Jedi once more. The first of Maul's Jedi kills, and all behind his master's back. From here he would kill the droid that helped them find the Padawan, pay off his bounty hunter allies, who then dropped him off at Zrexus' flagship. She actually recognized him as a Sith, and Maul knows she must die in order to keep the return of the Sith a secret. He makes his way back to Coruscant, where Sidious abruptly brings up the slain Padawan, explaining that this was all a test, that Maul was supposed to be driven to pursue and kill this Jedi. Maul showed a level of deception, independence, and passion that was necessary to become a powerful Sith Lord. As Maul thinks about the meaning of this lesson, he notes that he only feels a more intense craving to bring down the Jedi Order. And to fill this void, he would go and kill off Force sensitives that he discovered in the criminal elements of Coruscant's lower levels, relishing in the fact that these supposedly enlightened Jedi had overlooked these beings, and that they were being killed by a Sith right under their looming temple on the rich upper levels. Sidious chastises him but takes him back to Malachor to receive another lesson from their ancient forebearers. Again, the ashes transport his mind, where now he sees himself as a heroic Jedi. He is a savior, embraced with love and praise, but Maul is still able to draw on his rage and beheads the grateful family. Proud of himself for denying the comforting promise of the light side, he is instantly transported to the battlefront, surrounded by countless Jedi Knights. He snaps out of this vision and sees that the lesson was that strength alone is nothing. The Jedi have numbers. His master is right to temper his anger with patience. Ironically, as Maul finally learned some patience, it would only be a few weeks before he could finally step out of the shadows. Sidious contacted his agents in the Trade Federation and had them moved to blockade Naboo. Then Senator Palpatine would fight alongside Queen Padme Amidala to expose the weakness of the Valorum administration. A decade from now, the Sith Lord hoped to drag the entire galaxy into war, and for this, he needed the Jedi to think that the Sith had returned to manipulate the galaxy once more. the Jedi would need to retake their position as generals, defending the Republic from the Sith-controlled military force. So this weapon, which Sidious had been forging since childhood, was finally to be unsheathed, drawn against the Queen and the 2 Jedi who helped her escape.
It's impossible to locate the ship. It's out of our range.
Not full of Sith.
Sidious instructs him to find the Queen, and by scanning the destination of all signals sent out from Naboo, he picks up on a distress call from Governor Sio Bibble. Maul informs his master of the finding, and the Lord of the Sith says that the moment he has long been craving has finally arrived.
At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge.
Arriving at this sand planet via his scimitar, once planetside, he lets out a swarm of probe droids. Eventually, they discover a Naboo royal ship, and Maul races across the dune seas on his heavily modified speeder bike, the Bloodfin. As he closed in on the form of 2 humans sprinting towards the J-Type 327, Maul felt a vast disturbance in the Force that surprisingly came not from the Master, but from the small boy, Anakin, who would become Darth Sidious's most prized apprentice just 13 years later. But this feeling had to be ignored. He was bursting with furious excitement at finally being able to openly confront a true Jedi Master. Igniting a single blade, swift and powerful blows were blocked, but quickly draining Qui-Gon Jinn, an unrelenting barrage of saber and force-powered athleticism. If not for the Royal Starship kicking up sand and giving Qui-Gon an out, he may have been killed in just a few more seconds, as the Sith calmly stands tall, while the Jedi is exhausted, collapsing to the floor and short of breath.
Are you alright?
I think so.
What was it?
I'm not sure.
Back on Coruscant, Palpatine would manipulate the Queen, while the Jedi Council talked of the potential of the Sith re-emerging after millennia of extinction, a revelation that shook the foundation of the Jedi Order, with only Yoda considering that Qui-Gon's troubling conclusions might be true.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing.
Hard to see the dark side is.
Unsure what to do with this information, the Jedi have to focus on the task at hand, and Qui-Gon and Kenobi escort Padme and her retinue back to Naboo, where they will join Gungan forces to retake the capital. Anticipating this move, Darth Maul has been sent to the Royal Palace to work with the leaders of the Trade Federation. When Amidala does return, the Jedi are to be killed, and the Queen forced to sign the treaty. And so, moments after their arrival on the compound, Maul challenges them in the palace hangar. Both blades activated, he was able to put those long years of countless trials to use, easily engaging both Jedi while leading them right into a trap. Through the blast doors they entered the plasma refinery complex, and these raised platforms would be used to separate apprentice from master. With each strike and parry he channeled his anger, but he was not able to lead Qui-Gon through the laser wall defense grid quick enough. They were split up, with simply no way to continue the fight until the barrier lifted. Sidious may have smirked if he could have seen how the battle tested Maul's patience. As Qui-Gon calmly went into meditation, the Sith Lord paced with the energy of a wild animal. When the gates lift, the relentless assault from the double-bladed lightsaber continues, and eventually, he finds an opening. He had now killed a Jedi Master, and Maul instantly turned to look Kenobi in the eyes to savor the young Jedi's pain. When the gates come down once more, it is the Jedi who channels his rage into a ferocious assault, which results in the severing of Maul's lightsaber. But the Sith is still able to keep Kenobi at bay, and engage him long enough to open up his defenses to a forced push. Hanging over the side, Maul casually kicks the apprentice's blade into the reactor shaft, and the Sith decides to toy with his next kill. But oddly, the Jedi does not seem afraid. Utterly unwilling to be out high-grounded, Kenobi draws completely on the Force, launching himself up and over Maul, calling his master's lightsaber to him before cutting the Sith in two. Absolutely stunned by this impossible defeat, Maul's body plummets down this shaft. That same day, the Sith who had kidnapped him and brutally worked Maul into a weapon from the time of his childhood was on top of the galaxy, as Palpatine was elected to Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. Maul's indulgence in the final moment of the battle was his undoing, while Sidious's strategy of patience proved effective. That night, the Senator would return to his homeworld to attend the funeral of the slain Jedi Master. As the crowd looked upon the pyre, the Jedi wondered which of the Sith was killed, the Master or the Apprentice, while Palpatine looked at the result of years of training a Jedi assassin. Both believed that this monster of a Dathomirian Zabrak was killed that day, but Maul's wounds were cauterized by the blade, and his mission was not yet done. His rage gave him the will to refuse his fate, and as he fell down the shaft, he used the Force to pull a piece of ventilation tubing towards him, Grabbing onto it, he was able to climb up and through the bowels of the lower complex, until he finally arrived at a trash chute. This container was one of countless trash pickups on Naboo, taking it out to the dumpster world of Lotho Minor. Here, the once apprentice to the most powerful being in the galaxy would live in a maze of trash tunnels, surviving off of the rodents that infested this scrap heap of a planet. 3 years after the Battle of Naboo, his appearance was still reverberating through the Jedi Order, with some like Anakin even modifying a training droid to look like Darth Maul, something Palpatine witnessed and found most impressive. 12 years after that fateful duel, the fallen Sith's mother knew that her son, who was stolen all those years ago, was still alive somewhere in the Outer Rim. And Maul's return to the galaxy would be inadvertently initiated by Darth Sidious himself. He feared that Maul's replacement, Count Dooku, was plotting to betray him by training his own apprentice.
I would hate to think you are training your own Sith apprentice to destroy me.
You are no longer my apprentice. And now, you shall die.
By having a requisite class light destroyer broadside a fellow CIS capital ship of the Providence class, which Ventress was in, and then sending a hyena bomber to crash into the hangar, Dooku was convinced that Ventress was killed in the resulting explosion. But she was able to acquire a ship and fled to her homeworld of Dathomir. Originally a Night Sister, she was captured as a child by slave raiders. When Mother Talzin learned of how this Sith Lord betrayed Ventress, she helped to plan an assassination attempt. And though this attempt failed, it left Dooku vulnerable. To fill the role of a new apprentice, Talzin contacted the Sith and made him an offer. It is unlikely that the Count would have known much about Darth Maul, or his background, but he would definitely know that he was a Dathomirian Zabrak, and that they were highly trained killers.
It is true that your warriors are of an extraordinary caliber.
This gift would be a plan, and when the time was right, their witch magics would cause this assassin to turn on the Sith Lord. When Ventress arrives at the male encampment, the best among them are brought out. She finds many to be pathetically weak, but grabs a handful to compete against her, 2 of which were Maul's blood brothers, Savage and Farrell. This betrayed apprentice is easily able to best them all in combat, but when she is about to kill Farrell, his brother offers himself up and challenges her one-on-one. The incredible proficiency he was able to display when properly motivated impresses Ventress, even if she still defeats him. Savage was brought back to the Night Sister Temple, where they performed an excruciating transformation, using their magics to turn him into a powerful beast that would obey their every command. And to ensure that their control was complete, they had one final test for their creation.
No! Brother! Brother, please!
He is then planted at Dooku's side, and spends months training with the Count and going on a homicidal rampage that drew the attention of the Jedi Order. When Savage kills a target that Dooku wanted alive, the Count unleashes his rage on the beast, attacking him with blast after blast of Force lightning. Ventress arrives and activates the conditioning that enslaves him to her commands. But as the fight drags on, the Zabrak is beaten down, receiving even more volleys of lightning, enough that would have killed most other creatures. And this seems to have shaken him out of the spell cast by the Night Sister magic. He turns on them both, and then has to fight his way through the Jedi and droid alike in order to escape. Returning to Dathomir, he tells Talzin that he was not strong enough to defeat the Sith, and she assures him that he still has a destiny to fulfill, that his brother is still alive, and together they can have their revenge on the Sith, that alternative dark side cult that had used and abused both Night Brothers and Night Sisters alike. Savage's search would be tedious and extensive, but with a talisman he could tell when he was finally on the right world. Covered in miles of trash, this planet held a sibling that he long thought dead.
I'm here at last, brother.
An anaconda named Morley had offered to guide him around this maze like heaps of trash, taking him to the being that he suspected would be his brother. But this was a trick. He leads Savage to a trapdoor and drops him into the lair of a monstrous spider creature. It stalks Savage before striking and nearly overcoming him, but as it tries to rip him to pieces, the talisman grows ever brighter, and in its glow, he could not believe what he was seeing. This was his brother. Dumped here 12 years ago, Maul had crafted a set of mechanical legs and feasted on the scavengers and rodents that filled this place. Morley was Maul's first apprentice, calling Maul Master, as the serpent would lead scavengers into the pit and eat the scraps left by the Zabrak. This was a life that drove him to insanity.
Through victory, my chains have broken. The chains are the easy part. It's what goes on in here that's hard.
He saw himself as both fierce and pathetic, deserving of greatness and trash. manically bouncing back and forth as Savage tries to question him. But the one thing that remained intact was his want for revenge.
Into the filth, through the grief, Jedi! Revenge. I must have revenge.
This reunion was so powerful that even though this was a time that the dark side clouded much, such an intense dark side awakening in the Force was felt by Yoda meditating on Coruscant.
Killed your master many moons ago. He did.
How can this be? I killed him myself.
It is so, I fear.
Savage was able to get Maul on board the transport and take him back to Dathomir. We see that his fractured mind is torturing him with the memories of his past, bombarding him with the phrase he learned as a child during his training on Malachor.
Far above what once was great is rendered small.
Mother Talzin leads them to the temple, which in the time that Savage was gone had been attacked by the CIS. She performs a ritual similar to that done to transform Savage. Her magics clear his tortured mind, pulling out these poisonous thoughts, while scrap parts from destroyed B-2 super battle droids would be reforged into his legs, all bound into place through these dark side arts. When he rises, we see Talzin disappear, as her body had been killed during that CIS attack. But Maul is truly alive for the first time since the Battle of Naboo, and though he laments the years lost, he is intensely focused on revenge.
It has been so long and my path has been so dark. Darker than I ever dreamed it could be. Discarded, forgotten. I have missed so much.
The Clone Wars.
Oh yes, so it began. Without me. I was apprenticed to the most powerful being in the galaxy once. I was destined to become so much more. But I was robbed of that destiny by the Jedi, by Obi-Wan Kenobi.
The first step would be to get the Jedi's attention by slaughtering innocents, and the message sent to the Jedi Temple instructs Kenobi to come alone. Although Mace Windu believes his capture to be too important at a time where they worry about a secret Sith that is controlling the Senate, but Yoda still sides with Kenobi.
Against my better judgment. Agree with Master Kenobi. I do.
Luckily for the Jedi, the CIS were offering a 1 million credit bounty on Savage for his betrayal, something that Ventress gladly picked up at a bounty hunter guild. When Kenobi arrives to confront Maul, he acts as if he doesn't remember him. This of course infuriated Maul.
I'm not sure I've made your acquaintance.
I am surprised you could have forgotten me so easily after I killed your master and you left me for dead on Naboo.
And when Savage appears, the fight is brutal, with the Jedi being easily beaten down by the sheer strength of Savage. Taken prisoner, they intend to slowly torture the Jedi, but are interrupted by Ventress, who is able to sneak on board their ship. These unlikely allies' first means of attack is simply to troll the furious Zabraks.
Like your new legs, they make you look taller.
Brother, looks like he's half the man you are, Savage.
She leads them away and is able to double back and give one of her sabers to Kenobi. The fight is a blinding whirlwind of crimson blades, but again, the pure strength is simply too much in these tight quarters. Ventress loses a blade, Kenobi regains his, and Maul tries to fill the Jedi with rage to knock him off balance.
Your master, Qui-Gon Jinn, I gutted him while you stood helpless and watched.
Ventress and Kenobi know that they cannot win this fight, and they desperately make their way towards an escape craft, barely jettisoning off in time. Savage is eager to pursue them, but if there's one thing these past 12 years have taught Maul, it is patience.
We will be patient, Savage. I've waited so many years for my revenge. I can wait a little longer.
And the man who was once held back from killing Jedi went on a Jedi-killing spree across the galaxy, hunting down pairs of master and apprentice. And later, when they raid a banking clan transport to gain credits for their operation, Maul decides it is time to behave in a more traditional Sith role, putting the brother that saved him down into his proper place.
There is no need for dominance between us.
Always two there are, my brother. A master and an apprentice.
And now marks the start of Maul's rise to become the galaxy's most notorious crime boss. Using a cargo ship as bait, Weequay pirates are lured on board and offered great riches if they would betray their leader Hondo Ohnaka. As one of the most established criminals of this era, the Weequay Pirate King is not impressed.
You are not the first laser sword-wielding maniac. I've had to deal with.
He alerts Kenobi of the betrayal, and Obi-Wan and Adigalia make their way to intercept. Begun, the pirate wars have. The battle takes many lives, with Onaka's loyalists pushed back, and Galia eventually being killed by Savage. The Pirate King has a plan, however. In the base's tunnels, he traps the traitors, and with a rousing speech, combined with heavy firepower and the promise of plundering the Horned Men's ships, they are back on Onaka's side. Kenobi, meanwhile, is forced to fight the two alone. Maul shows some stunning strength in the Force, being able to pick up the Jedi and fling him at will. But as the brothers think they have him pinned, a quick move allows Obi-Wan to slide out from under their sabers and up through Savage's arm, severing it at the shoulder, taking his third Zabrak limb. Maul sees the plan has failed, and as they flee from the pirates, his mechanical legs are hit several times, eventually blowing one off at the knee. Savage has to carry his brother, while Maul deflects the incoming bolts. And they are both just able to make it into their ship, but a hit by a rocket launcher forces them onto an emergency escape craft. As the ship crashes to the surface, their escape vessel leads them out into interplanetary space. But this was not made as a standalone vessel. Fuel and life support systems quickly ran out, but as long as Maul was filled with rage, he finds a way to survive. A Death Watch patrol in this area had heard of the massive attack between Jedi, pirates, and these mysterious red lightsaber-wielding enemies of the Jedi. These Mandalorians cut their way into the ship using a darksaber, an ancient Jedi blade, and their leader Pre Vizsla is intrigued by these creatures.
If they're an enemy of the Jedi, then they're a friend of mine. Load them up.
And when they return to the Death Watch camp, Vizsla shows that he understands much more about Sith lore than most.
I thought there could only be two Sith, a master and an apprentice.
They are able to replace his legs with standard-sized human mechano legs, and Savage is given a humanoid robotic arm. Pre Vizsla calls Maul into a meeting, where he explains how Duchess Satine and the pacifists, calling themselves the New Mandalorians, have destroyed their warrior culture. But the pacifists' powerful allies in the Republic and Jedi Order are able to keep Death Watch at bay. But they both have a common enemy in Kenobi, who is personally leading the protection of Duchess Satine and overseeing the combined Republic forces to oppose Death Watch. Maul quickly agrees to help.
Mandalore will be yours, and Kenobi, this Sith pretender Dooku, and all our enemies will fall.
Though when alone with Savage, he tells them that they will merely be using the Mandos as a tool to exact their revenge. Maul tells Vizsla that although the Mandalorians are very skilled warriors, they need a true army, supply lines and numbers of troops that Death Watch simply cannot provide. Their first step is to go to the headquarters of the Black Sun crime syndicate on Mustafar. They set up a meeting, and the series of events from here on out will display all of the wisdom that Maul soaked up from Sidious. While we also see how Maul would have preferred to do things, injecting more overt violence and bold takeovers, which he always saw as more fitting the role of a Sith, while tempered with a singular, unified long-term vision that these acts fulfill, like Sidious advised. After failing to give up their operations, Savage severs all of their heads. All except one, that is, who would remain as the puppet leader over Black Sun, a fellow Phaline species to keep the appearance of autonomy. Pre Vizsla is excited to take this new combined army to Mandalore, but Maul shoots down this simplistic and naive response.
We have our army now. I have a plan to undermine Satine.
The army is weak. Your vision lacks clarity. Without us, you have no army and no reason to replace the Duchess.
This would be the first tremor through the Sith-Mando alliance, but from here they would take over several smaller criminal enterprises. Word quickly spread of this horned red devil that was taking over the underworld, to the point that major organizations like the Pike Syndicate actually reached out and volunteered an alliance. This so-called Shadow Collective then went on to the planet Nal Hutta to make one of their most daring takeovers. Offering the Hutts, the species that had been the leaders of crime for millennia, but had been so strong that Hutt space was considered independent from both the CIS and Republic. To this gathering of criminal nobility, Maul makes a simple offer.
Your lives, in exchange for Hutt space and everything in its borders.
There's a reason the Hutts have been dominant for so long. Some of the galaxy's best bounty hunters appear and start pushing back these unwanted guests. The toughest battle so far has them nearly driven off the landing platform, but Bo-Katan and a Mando reserve are able to swoop in and take out the guards. Fighting their way back into the meeting chamber, there was only one Hutt left. The others following what was likely a well-rehearsed emergency protocol in case of crazed criminal upstart, and they successfully made it to their escape craft and were already off-world. All but Aruba, who is tortured into telling them to go to Tatooine, When the Hutt see that they were able to easily take Jabba's palace, and that these unrelenting Sith and Mando won't stop until all the Hutts are dead or allied, the Hutt Grand Council gave in. For them, it wouldn't be a full takeover, but a tribute of troops and supplies.
The mighty Jabba and the Hutt families have decided to join you.
Vizsla sees that Maul is plotting more than he's letting on, and is driven furious by the Sith's statement that Maul will lead the criminal underworld, while the Mandalorians protect him and his enterprises. Without exploding on Maul there, he waits and confides in Bo-Katan that these two horned monsters will soon be taken care of.
Mandalore will soon be ours, and Maul and his brother will be dead alongside the Duchess.
Combined forces rally at the Death Watch outpost on Zanbar, where Maul explains how the criminals will be instrumental in painting Vizsla as a strong leader that Mandalore needs.
Our gangsters will make her look too weak to maintain control. Then you and your Death Watch will capture and arrest us, bringing order where Satine's weak government could not.
While both Vizsla and Bo-Katan admit that this is a great plan, she knows they can't be trusted. He tells Bo-Katan that when they have them executed, the criminals will break up and disperse, and they will have crossed the Sith before they could betray Mandalore. All the while, Savage warns that the Mandos can't be trusted, but Maul explains why they can't openly rule this world, and you see how the wisdom of political manipulation has been passed down from Palpatine, through Maul, and is now even being grasped by Savage.
We cannot rule openly without drawing the attention of the Jedi. We need Vizsla as the face of our rule, for now.
The promise of wealth will find us a new face on Mandalore.
On Vizsla's mark, the Shadow Collective descends on key areas of the capital city. Some are just open attacks on civilian centers that easily cut down the Mandalorian Guard, while others attack assets that are key to the government and economy, like the central bank. As news of this criminal blitzkrieg spreads throughout the Mandalorians, Duchess Satine is forced to give an emergency address, one which Death Watch crashes. Satine is sure that this is no coincidence, and pleads with her people that siding with them will lead to the end of Mandalore, a prophetic statement that she will not live to see come true.
Do not listen to him! His war will cause the end of Mandalore as we know it!
As attacks continue, Maul instructs Vizsla to start staging some theatrical apprehensions of the criminals. And over the next couple of days, it is Death Watch who always shows up at the right place and right time, subduing these offworlders. Once public approval was high enough, Pre Vizsla led the charge into the royal court and announces the coup.
Your weak-minded rule of Mandalore is at an end.
Satine knew she was outplayed, and peacefully surrenders. That night, Death Watch parades the captured criminals in front of a crowd of hundreds of thousands of Mandalorians, many proud to be returning to their strong warrior traditions for the first time in decades. Pre Vizsla is named the new Prime Minister, to resounding cheers. Triumphant over his ousting of the pacifists, there was one more thing to take care of. Maul is captured, paraded in front of the people as well, and finally transported to the prison alongside his brother, just where the Sith wanted to be. Together they are able to escape and eventually locate Almec, their pawn to replace Pre Vizsla all along. Almec was a member of Duchess Satine's government, previously serving as Prime Minister, but he was imprisoned for establishing a black market on Malachor once they decided to stay neutral in the Clone Wars. Being independent cut them off from Galactic Republic aid, and in the eyes of many, he was imprisoned simply for trying to ease the suffering of the citizens during this time of war, while others point out that these goods were non-essentials, and some of these smuggled goods ended up being toxic, nearly killing several children. All details that Maul loved to hear, a man who could be repackaged to the public, but who at his core was driven by luxury and greed. Maul also knew the Mandalorian codes of honor, and with Almec free, he went to challenge Vizsla to a one-on-one duel.
I challenge you, one warrior to another, and only the strongest shall rule Mandalore.
Death Watch respects this ancient right, and watches as their leader fights for his life. An intense battle, two ancient classes of warriors, Mandalorian versus Sith, with two of the most storied blades in history. Maul's was the first Sith blade to kill a Jedi in over 1,000 years. The Darksaber, an ancient blade crafted by the first Mandalorian to ever become a Jedi, and which was stolen back by the Mandalorians and used as a symbol of unification. The battle was close, but Maul would not be denied. As Vizsla knelt just steps away from the Mandalorian throne he coveted, he accepts his fate and upholds the Mandalorian code to his last breath.
Only the strongest shall rule.
Maul earned the Darksaber and the loyalty of Death Watch, but Bo-Katan and the squad of Night Owls would not stand down. Olmec was moved into place as a puppet leader, and make sure to leave Maul's part of it out of the story.
Hear me now. Duchess Satine has murdered 3 Vizslas, the true hero of Mandalore. Vizsla's last command that I be reinstated as Prime Minister.
From here, the Sith would sit upon the Mandalorian throne, plotting to expand the Shadow Collective, and most of all, use these actions to exact his vengeance on Kenobi, while Olmec ruled the day-to-day operations.
Go. Rule my people.
These emergency times would see the capital Sundari put under a complete transmission blockage, but Bo-Katan and those of Death Watch still loyal to her helped to rescue Duchess Satine.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Those Death Watch that were loyal to Maul changed their look to represent this secret and true ruler of Mandalore. These Maul DeLoreans would chase them through the capital, but Satine was eventually able to get far enough away to broadcast a distress call to the Jedi Temple, asking for none other than Kenobi.
This is a message for Obi-Wan Kenobi. I've lost Mandalore. My people have been massacred.
Coyote-Mundi points out that because they chose to be neutral, this is considered an internal affair. The Jedi cannot get involved. Having learned of their romantic history, Maul set this all up knowing that it would force Kenobi to come alone. In borrowing Anakin's old Spice Runner ship, the Twilight, Obi is able to sneak onto Mandalore. Incapacitating a dock patrol, and donning a suit of Mandalorian armor, Kenobi is able to free Satine. But they are quickly discovered and pursued by the prison guards. Within just moments of takeoff, a pair of rockets send the ship spiraling down to the landing pad. Satine barely survives, and Maul's archenemy is now in his grasp.
We meet again, Kenobi. Welcome to my world.
They are taken back to the throne room, and Maul savors every moment of this long-awaited triumph. He says he never planned on killing Kenobi. He wants the Jedi to experience all the pain Maul has suffered through. 12 years of wallowing in trash left to die, from powerful to forgotten, in constant starvation, driven to insanity. The rage bursts through when he force-chokes Satine into the air, the woman that Kenobi fell in love with early on in his life as a Jedi. And Maul senses the dark side calling to Obi-Wan.
Fear, and yes, your anger. Let your anger deepen your hatred.
But Kenobi is resilient in his defense. Even in this moment, he remains calm, tells Maul that only the weak give in to the dark side, and that he knows of Maul's origins on Dathomir.
I know where you're from. I've been to your village. I know the decision to join the dark side wasn't yours. The Night Sisters made it for you.
Silence! It was I who languished for years, thinking of nothing but you. Nothing but this moment.
Using the Force, he pulls her into the blade that was meant to symbolize the unification of Mandalore. Mortally wounded, she collapses, and with her final breath, the Duchess of Mandalore reassures Obi-Wan that she had never forgotten the love they shared. A love pulled apart by his duties to the Order and hers to her people.
I've loved you always. I always will.
As the room falls silent, Savage asks what should be done with him now, and Maul sends Kenobi away, knowing that brutally murdering this Jedi out of rage and bloodlust would not be as satisfying as calmly torturing him over many years. A decision that shows the influence from his old master, a man who knew how to use patience as a cruel weapon. Darth Sidious may have been proud if it had been in alignment with his singular vision, but this rise in the dark side had been detected by the Sith Lord as well.
You summoned me, Chancellor.
Prepare my ship.
In part 2 of the complete canon life of Darth Maul, we will see how he goes from this moment of greatest triumph to his inevitable fall, how Sidious would return to destroy his apprentice and everything he loved, see the criminal empire that Maul will build, and how his plans to kill his old master brings him to merge the light and dark sides, all bringing him right back to his archenemy, Kenobi. All the sources are cited in the description below, as well as links to connect with us on social media or find ways to support the channel for free. If you want to help fund videos like this, be sure to check out our Patreon. But most important of all, remember, a bad trip on ancient Sith corpse ashes can cause an irreversible bloodlust for dead Jedi, and the Force will be with you, always. This video is brought to you by Displate. In part 1, we learned about Maul's rise. Darth Sidious stole Maul from Mother Talzin and used him as his assassin, announcing the return of the Sith after 1,000 years. He would be cut down, but return, enhanced through mechanics and Night Sister magics, going on to create a criminal empire and taking the Mandalorian homeworld. Wielding his Crimson Blade alongside the Darksaber, he sat upon the throne of the galaxy's greatest warrior culture, and exacted his vengeance on Obi-Wan Kenobi. In part 2, we will not spoil the events of the Clone Wars Season 7, and I will pass over the events of the Ahsoka book that overlap with the Siege of Mandalore. We will see Maul's fall at the hands of his old master, and how this Night Brother desperately seeks out powers other than just the Sith, raising the Crimson Dawn, gaining ancient wisdom to merge the light and dark side of the Force, and harness the magics of the clan that he was once ripped away from as a child, all while maintaining an undying fire to see Kenobi and Sidious burn to ash. After Satine was killed, her old Jedi love was sent to rot in prison, but during Kenobi's transport, Bo-Katan launches a rescue mission with her Death Watch loyalists. Their escape would push Maul to launch the full Mandalorian Guard to pursue them, resulting in a massive battle between these split Death Watch forces, causing just the most recent in a long line of Mandalorian civil wars. When Sidious arrives on this Outer Rim planet, Maul detects a disturbance in the Force, something of incredible darkness that seems to be drawing nearer.
I sense a presence I haven't felt since Master.
The guards are effortlessly dispatched, and Maul drops to a knee, acting subservient to his old master. But Sidious is not one to be deceived, and just moments after his triumph, 12 brutal years to climb out from the scraps to the Mandalorian throne, Maul's master was here to take it all away. While the Civil War is consuming the city, Bo-Katan makes a decision that will change the course of Mandalore forever, setting them on the path that 29 years later would see the great Mandalorian clans fractured and living in hiding. She tells Kenobi that he must get the Republic involved in liberating Mandalore, to oust this Sith Lord Darth Maul.
Go back to your Republic and tell them what has happened.
That would likely lead to a Republic invasion of Mandalore.
Yes, and Maul will die. But Mandalore will survive. We always survive.
Back at the Royal Palace, 5 Crimson Blades are clashing in a fight for the position of the true Sith Lord. His immense powers on the dark side energize Sidious's movements, and gives him the power to hurl Maul at ease. And though Savage was strong enough to easily beat down Jedi, this old man is not repelled. Sidious's speed, strength, and accuracy proved too much for Savage, who was impaled and then sent flying out into the courtyard below. Just as Savage rushed to his brother Farrell's side during Ventress's trials on Dathomir, Maul ignores Sidious and rushes down to comfort his brother. In his dying words, Savage reveals that through all the Night Sister magic and even Maul's Sith training, he knows he never fully became a monster.
I'm not like you. I never was.
Sidious looms over his fallen apprentice, saying how he has long since replaced this weak Sabrak, that his old apprentice is no longer a Sith. Maul calls on his rage to fuel his strikes now with the remains of his severed saber staff and the Darksaber. He is able to keep up with his master, even landing a powerful kick, but Sidious knows that he can end this with his mastery of the dark side, fighting only with the power of the Force. He sends his once apprentice high into the air and crashes him down into the permacrete, up again and over into the courtyard wall, until he senses this Sith pretender is finally broken.
Have mercy. Please, please.
There is no mercy.
And just how Maul tortured Kenobi not with death, but the promise of a life stripped of everything and thrown in a cell, his old master does the same.
I'm not going to kill you. I have other uses for you.
Maul would be restrained and taken prisoner to the Outer Rim world of Stygian Prime, where the CIS maintained a high-security fortress known as the Spire. He brings Dooku in front of Maul just to drive him mad, and later reveals that he will use Maul to draw out Mother Talzin. Sidious knows that her bodily form was killed during Dooku and Grievous's previous attack, but can sense her spirit still roams the witch's lands. The Dark Lord knows that Almec had ordered some of the top Mandalorians to launch a rescue mission, led by Gar Saxon. And back at his cell, we see that Dooku is using Force Lightning to torture Maul, telling him that though the Hutts have abandoned his Shadow Collective, the Pikes and Black Sun are loyal. He wants to know their location and leaders so that the Count could take control of this underworld coalition. Death Watch rockets take out droidekas and B-2s while the strike team works its way towards Maul's cell. By blasting a hole in the fortress wall, they are able to zipline to freedom, quickly flying away via a Commerce-class fighter. From here, the loyal criminals and Death Watch forces are rallied on Zanbar, their old base from before the coup. Here, Almec says that this is repayment for breaking him out of jail, and Saxon reveals that they were able to recover the Darksaber from the palace courtyard. They all know that Dooku may be arriving at any second, as the Count's previous alliance with Death Watch may lead him back to Zanbar. And just moments later, C-9979 dropships approach, but many are blown out of the sky by heavy turbo laser emplacements. Grievous understands the caliber of these fighters, pointing out that these are not mere clones, and so he holds nothing back. B-2s, Commandos, and Droidicas lead the assault. But the comeback Sith is in good stride, slashing down droid after droid with Mandalorian blade. Grievous and his Magna Guard swoop in over Maul, and with crackling purple energy engage their electro staves. These droids are trained to combat Jedi, but they are still defeated. Then Grievous drops down and starts laying waste to Death Watch Mauldalorians. The unending swarm of droids eventually cuts down the rest of Maul's forces. Just then, the fighters screech overhead and drop their payloads, consuming the battlefront in flames, while another of the fighters come in with a loading ramp extended in order to rescue Maul, a move seen all those years ago with Qui-Gon Jinn. Grievous admits to Dooku that Maul's combined forces nearly defeated him, but that Maul has been crushed by this loss. Ordering a full retreat, the Black Sun, Pike, and Death Watch ships all flee. And on the way, we see that Maul can meditate on the Force and connect with his lost mother. Her spirit bursts forth and uses his body as a vessel to speak through. It is revealed that the amassing of the Shadow Collective and taking of Mandalore was all a part of their plot to draw Sidious out. They will trap him and finally defeat him on the homeworld from which Maul was stolen from all those years ago. But for now, they must assume Sidious let him escape, and they will first rally at Ord Mantell, where Black Sun has a stronghold. Once on world, Maul rallies the crime leaders and explains that though the CIS is immensely powerful, they are also stretched out across the galaxy, fighting the Clone Wars on countless fronts. We see that in secret, Dooku explains to Grievous that this witch mother is powerful enough to pose a threat to Sidious's plans. Maul points out where he wants the droids led for an ambush, and where the anti-aircraft defenses should be placed. While on the main landing pad, a shuttle reveals that Knight Brothers have come to help in the fight. Orbital bombardment begins with the fire from several Munificent-class, droid supply ships, and C-9979s in orbit. Once the city's defenses had been believed destroyed, the landing craft were sent in. Hordes of droids are met by Shadow Collective forces, while Dooku and the Magna Guards make their way to the main palace. In orbit, Grievous and his T-Series droids are ambushed by several squadrons of Commerce-class gauntlet fighters. While back in the palace, Dooku is met by the Knight Brothers. Hoping to cut the head off of the CIS invading force, Maul heads straight for the command ship, setting down on the Munificent and breaching its hull. Storming onto the bridge, Maul force pushes the droid crew into scrap metal, and puts the Darksaber right up to Grievous's cyborg throat, telling him to deactivate the droids or die. Though the battle droids did not require a signal to operate, an improvement made since that weakness was exposed during the Battle of Naboo, these droids do still contain an emergency shutoff that could only be issued by the top general. Just as the Shadow Collective was overwhelmed, the droids went limp, and as Dooku was killing the last of the Knight Brothers, these combined forces come to the rescue, turning the tables on the Count, who is now Maul's prisoner. Back on the CIS command ship, Maul calls to his mother. She praises him and assures Maul that next will come the capture of Darth Sidious himself. And on Coruscant, Palpatine is trying to use the reemergence of Maul to fill in the character of that rogue Sith that was manipulating the Clone Wars all along. The Supreme Chancellor says that the Jedi and Clone Army must do whatever they can to capture the Sith, and perhaps then there shall be peace. Kenobi and Tipley are chosen to search a Mandalorian supply depot near Ord Mantell. Meanwhile, Maul has his captives contact their lord, and he proudly shows off how he bested this replacement apprentice and his top general. Sidious calmly says just to dispose of them, but cracks and shows that this was not what he expected. As the Jedi arrive in the system, Kenobi assures Tipley that his emotions are in check, even after what Maul did to Satine. Maul keeps Dooku in his chambers, and reveals that Mother Talzin is still alive, and that she has a plan for defeating Sidious, if only Dooku would align with them. Together, they could combine CIS forces with the Shadow Collective, and with their Force powers and her Night Sister magics, they could defeat Sidious. In her spirit form, she tells him the story of Maul being ripped away from her, used and discarded at Sidious's whim, and warns the Count that this too will be his future. But just then, Republic forces discover their location, and deploy gunships and fighters. During the confusion, Dooku calls on the Force to open the cells, and Grievous bursts free. The secret base is carved into an asteroid surrounded by a dense asteroid field. But by detecting his presence in the Force, the Jedi know where to land their ships. The terrifying speed and strength of the cyborgs allows Grievous to rip through the guards and into an escape craft. And knowing that they will have to work together, Maul frees Dooku and gives him back his lightsaber. Mace Windu and Aayla Secura arrive with backup, and Dooku opens up with a volley of lightning. Secura is kicked by Maul, while Tipley is force-pulled into Dooku's blade. A Mandalorian rocket bursts and splits up Dooku and Secura, allowing the Sith to escape, while Maul promises Kenobi that he will see him again. When reports are made to the Chancellor, we see that Palpatine fears that his plans may very well have backfired this time. While in the cockpit of the Comarch, the Shadow Collective vents their fears that Maul has forgotten that their alliance was about profit and power, not revenge. But Maul knows that if Sidious is dead, he can become the galaxy's puppet master, and in a flash he has Dooku taken away, suspecting that their alliance was all part of his old master's plan. They then set down on Dathomir. Hauled into the Night Sister Temple, Maul calls forth to his mother, who starts exacting her own vengeance on Dooku. In orbit, the scimitar is decloaked. Maul's old ship was secreted away by Sidious when he learned of his apprentice's failure on Naboo. All these years later, its stealth, surveillance, and jamming technology was still some of the best in the galaxy. The perfect way to rescue Grievous and make their way to this dark side magic imbued world. Mother Talzin starts draining Dooku's life force, and given enough time, she would be able to be made flesh once more. Maul savors this moment and leans in to tell his replacement that his mother had drained herself to restore Maul, back when she cleansed his mind and binded his legs. But she waited, ever patient, knowing that her son would bring her one strong in the Force, so that she could devour their life force and make herself reborn. But Sidious would make his reappearance to the Witch's Temple, the place where he had first met Talzin decades before. He tells Maul that he continues to miss the lesson being taught to him by the dark side, that only Sidious's plan shall govern the universe. As Maul confronts his old master, Dooku's body rises, possessed by the spirit of Mother Talzin. She attacks, but is repelled. Sidious knows he cannot toy with her. He pumps his full force into disarming and then shocking her into submission. Grievous and Maul are stunned by the duel between these masters of different dark side arts. And as Dooku's body falls, the Witch Mother rises, fully formed through the power of her Night Sister magics. Maul force pushes Grievous out of the temple, while Talzin taunts the Sith Lord that stole her son. Long has she waited. As their lightning interlocked, they were at a stalemate until Dooku awoke. Maul joins his mother, amplifying her strength, but when Dooku adds to the storm, she can sense that again, she has been outplayed. She has been bested by the Sith. Desperately, Maul begs that his mother, the only living family Maul knows, try to escape with him. But she knows that her force field is all that holds back this deadly tangle of Sith lightning. As Grievous makes his way back into the temple, Talzin uses the last burst of energy to hurl her son into the arms of the Maul-Dalorian allies. Talzin drops to the floor and meets her ultimate end at the hands of General Grievous. Maul's last image being these two Jedi blades taking her life, and her magics failing the flesh, quickly eroding into a twisted husk. Dooku worries about Maul's escape, but is assured that they will finally take Dathomir and have no Night Sister magic to worry about, while Maul is moving into place as his unknowing pawn. He would return to Mandalore, where he would regain control through Almec, but now he and his loyalist forces would go into an even deeper hiding. Maul assumed that Sidious would still be searching for him, not knowing that the true plan was to leave Maul in place on the Mandalorian homeworld. In the final days of the war, the Grand Army of the Republic would launch the Siege of Mandalore. In order of threats to Palpatine's plans, first would be a rival Sith Night Sister alliance, the combined power of Maul, Savage, and Mother Talzin. With that eliminated, the next biggest threat to the Empire's rule would be from the Mandalorians, the war-loving race with thousands of years of independence. The Jedi Order would be alarmed that this secret Sith was still alive and ruling Mandalore, thinking Maul may have been that Sith Master all along, manipulating the entire Clone Wars from this neutral world. Fitting the reports by Obi-Wan, the invasion would be something that Bo-Katan had asked for. The former Jedi Padawan Ahsoka Tano would receive a warm welcome back to the GAR by the 501st. And as a Jedi General, she and Rex would head the assault on the capital with the 332nd Company, a subsect formed out of the 501st for this mission to take Mandalore. I've chosen to pass over the details of the Siege of Mandalore as it will be covered in Season 7 of the Clone Wars. The Ahsoka book details much of this final battle, but I thought best not to spoil these parts as many have not read that book yet. But as shown in other lore, suffice it to say Maul would get away, while Ahsoka and Rex went into hiding, each knowing the secret, true Sith Master had outmaneuvered the entire galaxy. Maul now only had one ally left, the loyal members of the Shadow Collective. Hiding in the thick jungles and cavernous rocky terrain of Dathomir, Maul would spend the next 9 years transforming these criminals into a new organization called Crimson Dawn. Again, a puppet leader would be necessary, and would come in the form of Dryden Voss. Though never reaching the level of the Hutts, they were one of the most powerful criminal empires at this time. But when this puppet was killed by Solo and his associates, Maul tells Kira that she has been promoted. What became of this organization is as of yet unknown, but it is clear that the Force had a greater plan for Maul than just crime boss. Still intent on discovering a way to get revenge on Sidious, he traveled to the world that started his training as a child, to the ancient Sith world of Malachor. Survivor of Order 66, Kanan Jarrus, his apprentice, and Ahsoka then came to visit the temple. Ezra is separated from them and approached by this mysterious man.
Call me Old Master.
As the young Jedi is led through the ash-covered battlefront, Maul reveals that he knows of the Inquisitors, that each of them, and their master, are his enemy as well. He reveals that he was a Force wielder, but no Jedi, leading Ezra to call him a Sith, while quickly raising his blade. Maul explains that he is no Sith, and now we learn how he sees things.
The Sith took everything from me. Ripped me from my mother's arms, murdered my brother, used me as a weapon, and then cast me aside.
But this doesn't mean that Maul has rejected the wisdom of Sith teachings. He understands that there is truth in their methods of making one strong in the Force. In the first of the Temple's trials, it requires them to work together. Symbolic of the rule of two, one must lift the first block and the other the second, and then repeat this throughout a narrow shaft. And while giving his instructions, we see Maul referencing lines in the ancient Sith code that reads, "Peace is a lie, there is only passion. Through passion I gain strength. Through strength I gain power. Through power I gain victory. Through victory my chains are broken. The Force shall set me free."
Your passions give you strength, and through strength you gain power.
Meanwhile, on the level above, Kanan and Ahsoka have subdued the Inquisitor named the Eighth Brother, and they try to figure out why he was there before they even arrived. Who was he hunting?
But you are not expecting us. Who are you after?
A shadow.
Deep inside of the Sith Temple, Maul and his new apprentice have discovered the Holocron Chamber. But again, to access it needs these two to work as one. Ezra calls on the Force to leap across the crevasse, while Maul must also force push him to make it across. And as he grabs the Sith Holocron, the temple comes to life for the first time in over 1,000 years, opening up at the peak and raising the central platform. Ezra again must trust his life to Maul, and leaps down to be caught in the Force and pulled up towards the old master. Maul savors this combination of fear and trust in the young Jedi, as he easily could have ripped the Holocron out of his hands and left Ezra to fall into oblivion. Outside the temple, the fifth brother and seventh sister respond to the Inquisitor's SOS call, while inside of the pyramid, Maul hints that he knows about the true power of this Sith installation.
Sith holocrons are keys that can open many doors.
This temple would later prove to have one of the doors to the world between worlds, one of the most mysterious and powerful tools in the entire galaxy, allowing one to walk through time and alter past and future events. Maul seems to have understood this ability and was hoping to use it to undermine Sidious by attacking him at some crucial point in the past. But for now, the plan is simple: to escape here alive. As they exit the temple, they walk right into the latest battle between light and dark on Malachor. Being a man who has survived it all, who suffered through the highs and lows alongside Jedi and Sith allies alike, Maul's response is genuine amusement at this series of events.
What fun! What fun!
To prove his alliance with these Jedi, he says that he has given up his Sith title.
Darth Maul lives.
Formerly Darth, now just Maul.
On this world where he started his Sith training nearly 5 decades earlier, where his burning hatred for the Jedi would be imprinted, and a passion to bring about the revenge of the Sith, he now found himself fighting in between these two groups, working in line with his own vision. The Inquisitors are terrified to think that he has acquired the Holocron.
The Holocron. Do you have it?
You will find out soon enough.
While Ahsoka has seen him rise from the shadows before, and calmly asks him what his new plot is.
Maul, what game are you playing?
The end game, Lady Tano.
The ex-Sith uses the logic of his Mandalorian allies during the Clone Wars, said by Vizsla and Bo-Katan.
I am the enemy of your enemy now, and I have my own reasons for wanting the Empire to fall. But we have little time. The one they call Vader will be here soon.
And goes on to explain that the Inquisitors fleeing means that they must have called in Vader. Maul knows that Darth Vader is Sidious's latest expendable apprentice, and he tells the Jedi that their ambushing Vader here and now would be the best shot they have at killing the Emperor's second-in-command. He also tells them that they can learn the power of this device by attaching the holocron to the obelisk at the pyramid's peak, and as they ascend, they split up and are set upon by the Inquisitors. Maul hopes to turn Ezra to the dark side, to strike down the Seventh Sister as she was helplessly being force-choked, but to Maul's anger, the Jedi can't do it. Seeing that a ship is approaching, Ezra is told to rush to the peak, while Maul jumps into the fray. He quickly dispatches the fifth brother, while the eighth brother is forced to his death. When Kanan asks where his apprentice has gone, Maul reveals part of his plan.
Where's Ezra?
You mean my apprentice?
He lunges at Kanan, striking at his head, and although the Jedi pulls away just in time, his eyes are melted by the crimson blade. The pure red of a Sith saber was the last thing Kanan would ever see. Where Maul came here to experience a vision of ancient Sith falling to Jedi blades, this Jedi would forever lose his vision on Malachor. But Maul underestimated how strong this survivor of Order 66 was. On this ancient Sith world, Kanan would have to completely give in to the light side of the Force, let it guide his every action. As Maul went to strike, the Jedi would counter with stunning speed and efficiency, knocking the Shadow off balance and hurling him off the edge of the temple. If he could not access the world between worlds, if this temple could unleash the energy of its superweapon, he could kill all of these Jedi and Vader at the same time. And while Ezra unknowingly activated this weapon, Vader would arrive and face off against his old apprentice, Ahsoka Tano. Kanan and Ezra would rip out the holocron, resulting in a full meltdown of the complex. Though this method of attacking Sidious was lost, Maul would commandeer the Inquisitor's TIE fighter and escape Malachor, while Maul's words found root in Ezra, tempted by the dark side and letting it consume him enough to unlock the holocron. Months would go by as Maul meditated on the Force and tracked the movements of the growing Rebel Alliance, trying to locate the ship that brought him his apprentice. By storming a Sphyrna-class corvette, Maul takes the crew prisoner and tortures them until they reveal the location of the ghost. And thinking that they had come upon the remains of an Inquisitor attack, Kanan calms Hera, only to find out that Maul has been able to capture the entire crew. He promises to release them all, in exchange for the Sith holocron that they had taken from Malachor, but also Kanan's Jedi holocron. Seeing his love Hera so close to execution, Kanan agrees, an example of why the Jedi of old warned against such attachments.
Jedi holocron. Give that to me as well.
Kanan, no.
Fine.
On board the Ghost, Maul is taking an interest in the Spectre's home. He wants a tour to see the belongings and lifestyle of these two Jedi, but Sabine tried to deny him, something the once ruler of Mandalore finds amusing.
Mandalorian, you of all should trust me. For did I not once rule your people?
Checking out each of the rooms, he comes to Kanan's, where Maul horrifies Hera with the ability to search her mind. He even knows Kanan's true name at the time that he was an apprentice, from before Order 66.
Kanan Jarrus, or should I use his real name? Caleb Doom.
And by probing deeper, he sees how they met Ezra, how he stole the Jedi holocron, and where Kanan has since placed it. While Maul tries desperately to open it up, his droid guard assistants are watching over the prisoners. These are militarized versions of the RIC-1200 tour guide droids that once provided a friendly face to visitors of Mandalore. Not the best combat automata, the crew are able to dispatch them and hide from the fallen Sith. They have an idea to take advantage of Maul's droid legs by engaging the powerful electromagnet in the cargo hold, ripping the half a Zabrak to the ceiling. But he is barely phased. Decades worth of countless scenarios enabled him to just focus on deflecting the bolts, deactivating the magnet, and using the Force he neutralizes the Spectres. Meanwhile, Ezra and Kanan have returned to the planet Atollon to retrieve the Sith holocron. It was left with the Bendu, an ancient Force wielder being that is neither Sith nor Jedi. In a series of tunnels that the Krykna call home, the holocron was exerting a sort of trance over these spider-like creatures. They are able to extract it and head to Maul's provided coordinates for rendezvous, the old Mandalorian asteroid outpost used when Maul had captured both Count Dooku and General Grievous. When the Jedi arrive, they see Maul has retained a relic from his time as leader of Death Watch, the black and red painted Commerce-class Mandalorian gauntlet fighter. When Maul tries to shove Kanan out of an airlock, it is this ship that the Jedi is able to grab hold of and launch himself back towards the hangar bay. In a command room, the ex-Sith and young Jedi calmly seat themselves on the floor and meditate on their holocrons. As the devices open up immense dark and light side wisdom, they move closer and start to merge. This combination allows one to find the answer to any question they seek. Both wish to find the key to destroying the Sith. As the Force provides glimpses for the answer, Maul grows frantic as he only sees his ultimate fate.
I see nothing, only oblivion.
While Ezra starts to see a planet with 2 suns. Maul pushes him to peer further beyond the veil, but the Spectres arrive, and Kanan's encouragement pulls Ezra back. The ritual is broken, creating an explosion of Force power, and in the confusion Maul escapes, nearly driven mad by the glimpses that he saw. In a voice full of anger and insanity, he keeps repeating one phrase.
He lives.
The Spectres would carry on their fight against the Empire, but this ritual of combining dark and light sides has intertwined the minds of Ezra and Maul, similar but less powerful than the Force dyad connection between Kylo and Rey. Memories were shared between the two, and a bond across time and space was made. Maul saw the secret rebel base, and Ezra experiences both audio and visual stimuli of Maul's presence. He isn't there in the sense that others can see him, but Kanan doubts that this is merely a hallucination or Force vision.
Maybe it was some kind of Force vision.
Maybe.
Although they try and move on and prep for the liberation of Lothal, Maul appears again, and in such a convincing way that Ezra attacks him and would have struck him down if Kanan did not intervene, showing Ezra that this was just a fellow rebel. When the Jedi go to seek guidance from the Bendu, Maul shows himself in the flesh and explains how their minds have been intertwined.
When you abruptly severed our connection with the holocron, you mixed up the information. You learned a bit of what I want to know, and I learned a bit of what you wanted to know.
He says he will only take the Jedi alone, but they will work together to complete the vision they shared. Only this will give them the answer to defeating the Sith once and for all. But by using Ezra's comlink, the Spectres are able to track him to the planet Dathomir. On his homeworld, Maul tries to bond with the orphan boy by relaying the past of the Great Witches, his family that were all killed by the Empire, their Night Sister magic seen as too powerful. The answer given by the Force is in their minds, just fragmented and separated. The only way to link now would be through a Night Sister ritual.
The only way to access the knowledge we seek is to merge our minds again.
They would walk through the wreckage of the temple, which 17 years earlier saw Maul liberated from his damaged mind, and given new legs to launch his revenge. Eventually they come to Maul's quarters, a room full of relics from his former glory, a Mandalorian helmet, objects acquired through his Crimson Dawn crime empire, and most importantly, a shrine to the moment he got his revenge on Kenobi. Mandalorian artwork of the beloved Duchess scarred on the eyes and throat, while below rested the very blade used to kill her. The blade used to symbolize the unification of the Mandalorians was used to honor the moment of their fall. Maul explains that he has been training in the Night Sister arts. He learned that the altar that rebirthed him and Savage was their source of power, the wellspring of the planet's naturally generated dark side magics. With a potion, they could merge their minds, and together see that vision that was interrupted. Maul's glimpse reignites a thirst for vengeance that he had thought stolen from him. All official reports state that General Obi-Wan Kenobi, leader of the 212th Attack Battalion, was killed by his own men after it was revealed that the Jedi tried to take over the Republic. But the holocron vision showed his archenemy was alive, and with this ritual, he could learn the old Jedi's location.
It ends where it began, a desert planet with twin suns.
Both were answers to the same question, how to defeat the Sith. As Luke would help turn Vader to the light, it would be Obi-Wan that led Anakin's son into the Jedi path. But the trapped spirits of the Night Sisters wanted to be paid in blood for use of their arts, to use that life force to come back. Maul warns Ezra that they will try to possess the flesh, but Kanan and Sabine are caught. With the characteristic green magics animating the body and flowing out of the eyes, they try to kill Maul and Ezra. They are forced to run, with Maul showing the Jedi that his friends are trapped to the temple grounds, that they must take the chance to embrace their destiny and seek out that which can destroy the Sith. Ezra's denial infuriates Maul.
Forget the past! Forget your memories! Forget your attachments. We can walk that path together, as friends, as brothers.
As Maul runs off to the world which all those years ago he revealed the Sith to the Jedi, Ezra runs back to save his friends. In doing so, he cuts into the altar, causing the spirits to dissipate. Maul would spend the next months searching Tatooine. All he had was the knowledge that somewhere on these sand dune seas, the Jedi was in hiding. He could sense his presence, but again we see how this all-consuming want for vengeance was driving him mad. Like back on the trash heap planet Lotho Minor, he manically swings back and forth between self-pity and righteous anger.
Will it end here? Like this? No. No. Kenobi.
Back on the Rebel secret base, Ezra is awoken by a replay of Kenobi's message from the Jedi Temple, sent just moments after Order 66, warning the survivors not to return to Coruscant. He's unsure how this is happening, but he also hears Maul through the Sith holocron.
New hope.
Through their linked minds, just as Maul could so easily find Ezra, the Jedi can sense that Maul has gone to Tatooine to look for Kenobi. He then tells the Spectres of this, but Captain Rex reminds him of the personal accounts of Senator Organa.
Ezra, no one would like to believe General Kenobi's alive more than I would. But Senator Organa confirmed his death.
Defying Hera's orders to focus on the liberation of Lothal, he steals an A-Wing and heads for the desert world. By using the fragments of the Sith and Jedi holocrons, he can focus and let it guide him like a Force compass. He tracks the sources down to a cavern and finds a fragment of the Sith holocron, but is then set upon by Tusken Raiders. Maul knew his potential apprentice would arrive, and used him to draw Kenobi out. Once the ship was destroyed by the Tuskens, the boy was forced to walk on foot. As a massive sandstorm surges over them, Maul calls out through the Force.
Draw him out.
Kenobi sees the lost soul, and will not let him die in the desert. He takes him to the campfire, and comforts who he learns is a young Jedi. Kenobi assures him that it was not the holocrons that wanted him to come here, but more of Maul's manipulation.
Maul used your desire to do good to deceive you, and in doing so he has altered the course of many things.
Using their bond, Maul tracks the two down, and as he walks up to the man that cut him down 30 years before, Kenobi calmly rises and tells Ezra that he must be the one to finally settle this. And in the words he chooses, it shows a level of peace and goodwill that Kenobi has achieved by meditating all these years in the light side, not addressing him with derision or trolling, but understanding that this Dathomirian Zabrak was a wounded creature, just another thing the Sith had destroyed, and he says that he will mend this wound.
I will mend this old wound.
Maul, however, is still consumed by his hatred, pointing out how despite Kenobi's noble alliance to the light, he is scraping by on this wasteland of a planet.
I have come to kill you, but perhaps it's worse to leave you here, festering in your squalor.
Kenobi just watches the creature that has spent a lifetime twisted by his anger, until Maul hits on something sacred. The visions given by the Force did not just show him Kenobi, but the old hermit's role in protecting Luke. Maul teases this fact out, revealing that he knows why Obi-Wan has chosen this world to hide out on.
You are protecting something? No. Protecting someone.
At this, Kenobi knows their storied history must come to an end. His blue blade ignited, he cannot permit this secret to escape, and Maul feels that all of his training has led up to this moment. While the old man languished in obscurity in the sand dunes, Maul had commanded criminal empires, studied the depths of the Night Sister and ancient Sith rituals, even peered past the veil by merging the light and dark. But Kenobi had so much more, the simple fact that he was carrying out the will of the Force. As these lifelong enemies faced each other for the last time, the battle would be a quick series of saber strikes, the blue blade meeting the double-bladed lightsaber, until a swift and efficient movement brought Kenobi's saber down through the center of the staff, and through the chest of this tortured being. Knowledge of Luke was not something Kenobi could toy with. This fight could not be dragged out, but had to be ended immediately. Finally defeated, blades fell to his side, and Kenobi dropped down to hold the man that had haunted him for decades. Kenobi knew that at the core they had both lost everything due to Darth Sidious, and with Maul's dying breath he asked one final question.
Tell me, is it the Chosen One?
He is.
He will
Maul once said that he would never die until he had his vengeance, and so Maul perished knowing that the Sith Lord who had ripped him from his mother, trained him like a savage animal, filled him full of hatred and rage only to dispose of him when he found a replacement. The Dark One that undermined each of his triumphs over Death Watch and Mandalore, over the Shadow Collective and Crimson Dawn. The Sith Lord that killed his brother, his mother, his entire clan, and who now happily rested upon the throne as Emperor of the Galaxy. That Sith would be killed. And fittingly for Maul, Sidious's downfall would come from his apprentice, when Vader would revert back to the light, back to the man he once was under Kenobi's apprenticeship. In training Luke to confront Vader, it would be his archenemy Kenobi's actions that ultimately helped Maul get his revenge. This duel of fates was finally over, and Maul went to his oblivion. Kenobi showed respect for Maul, gently closing the eyes of a man who had killed his master and murdered the love of his life. He then made a proper funeral pyre in the style of Qui-Gon's on Naboo. Maul's legacy would be felt in the galaxy for decades to come, with his ship the Night Brother being the vessel used to transport Ezra and Clan Wren's Mandalorians to Thrawn's Interdictor, which was moments away from destroying the newly formed rebellion. And during Operation Cinder, Leia Organa would sense the impact of Maul's reveal in the Theed hangar on Naboo, an event that left an imprint in the Force, causing her to grow cold and fearful. But most of all, the Wills, those that recorded the great epics of galactic history, and from whom we learn of the Skywalker saga. These Force Shaman, the Wills, noted Maul as a being of great galactic importance. And that concludes the complete life of Darth Maul. I want to give a special thanks to Displate for making videos like this possible. They have tons of amazing designs from all sorts of fandoms. As you can see, we got Halo, Half-Life, and even Star Wars schematics. This whole thing is metal, and really gives it an extra cool factor and added durability. Perfect for MetaNerdz HQ. And the installation is surprisingly easy. You don't have to put any holes in your wall. No pins, nails, or hooks. Instead, when you buy your display, it comes in this really neat packaging with everything you need to get it on the wall. It's really super easy and just takes a couple minutes. You just use the supplied guide leaf paper, peel the sticker off the magnet, and press. Then you take your metal poster and attach it via the magic of magnetism. No messy holes, and it's really easy to swap it out for new displays. Every time you buy a display, you're supporting the creator that uploaded the artwork, since they get a percentage through the art marketplace. And you even get 10 new trees planted with each plate you purchase. Here are just some of the amazing designs, so be sure to check them out by clicking on the link in the description. Clicking that link gives you a discount while helping to support the channel, and I'm sure you'll find some really cool displays. Be sure to check them out and upgrade your artwork. Thanks again, Displate. If you want to see more documentary-length videos like this, these longer deep dive videos, then go ahead and check out our documentary playlists with things like the complete history of the Mandalorians or the Kaminoans and the complete history of cloning. If you want to connect with us on social media, find ways that you can help support this channel for free, or check out our Patreon. Be sure to check out the links in the description. Special shout out to our supporters over on Patreon, but most important of all, remember, Maul said he wasn't dying until he knew that he could get revenge, and the Force will be with you always.